I arrived at Bellini's, the upscale Italian restaurant where my father's 60th birthday dinner was being held, my stomach in knots. After 5 years of minimal contact, seeing my entire family would be difficult enough. But Rachel, my sister, was supposed to be here too. She had stood by me when our parents disowned me for dropping out of law school to pursue my tech startup. As I approached the private dining room, I heard my mother's voice, cold and final. "She's dead to us. Ignore her when she arrives." I froze, my hand on the door. They were talking about Rachel, who had sacrificed everything to help me succeed. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door to the private dining room. The conversation immediately halted as every head turned toward me. My father, Robert Williams, rose from his seat at the head of the table, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Donavan," he said, extending his hand. "You made it." I shook his hand, noting how much older he looked since I'd seen him last. His hair had gone completely gray, and the lines around his eyes had deepened considerably. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said, handing him a small, carefully wrapped package. My mother, Eleanor Williams, remained seated, her posture rigid and her expression cold. She offered me the barest nod of acknowledgement before turning her attention back to her wine glass. "Well, look who finally decided we were worth his time," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I suppose we should be honored that the great Donavan Williams could fit us into his busy schedule." "Eleanor," my father warned quietly. "What?" "I'm simply stating facts," she replied. "Our son gets a lucky break in business, and suddenly his family isn't good enough for him anymore." I bit back a retort, reminding myself that I was here to repair relationships, not worsen them. Uncle James, my father's younger brother, and the only family member who had maintained contact with me over the years, stood up and clapped me on the shoulder. "Good to see you, kid," he said warmly. "Don't mind your mother. She's just being herself." Aunt Patricia, my mother's older sister, pursed her lips in disapproval. "I see success hasn't improved your wardrobe choices," she commented, eyeing my simple button-down shirt and slacks. "You look like you could be waiting tables here rather than dining." My cousins Tyler and Amanda, both in their early 30s, gave me awkward smiles but remained silent. The tension in the room was palpable as I took the empty seat beside Uncle James, noticing there was another empty chair that I assumed was meant for Rachel. "So, Donavan," my father began as appetizers were served, "James tells me your company is doing well." Before I could answer, my mother interjected. "A flash in the pan, I'm sure. If he had stayed in law school like we planned, he'd have a respectable career by now, instead of playing with computers." "Actually," I said, maintaining a calm tone, "we just closed our Series C funding round. We're expanding into 3 new markets this year." "How nice for you," my mother said dismissively. "I suppose that makes up for throwing away generations of family tradition." The Williams family had practiced law in Boston for over 100 years. My great-grandfather had founded the firm, and it had been expected since my birth that I would join after law school, eventually taking over from my father. As dinner progressed, I noticed my father seemed distracted and tired. He barely touched his food and winced slightly when he reached for his water glass. This wasn't the robust, commanding man I remembered. Something was wrong. "Where's Rachel?" I finally asked during a lull in conversation. I thought she would be here. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother's eyes hardened, and my father suddenly became very interested in rearranging his silverware. "Rachel is not joining us," my mother said firmly. "Why not?" "It's Dad's birthday. She should be here." "Rachel has made her choices," my mother said. "We don't need to discuss her tonight." "She's your daughter," I said, my frustration growing. "Our sister," I added, looking at Tyler and Amanda, who both avoided my gaze. Uncle James leaned close to me and whispered, "She was uninvited after she defended you again last Christmas. It got ugly." My heart sank. "What do you mean, uninvited?" Before James could answer, Aunt Patricia chimed in loudly. "Well, I think it's for the best. The girl has been making terrible decisions lately, running with that awful crowd, looking like she hasn't slept in weeks. Eleanor was right to draw the line. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, looking around the table. "Rachel has always been the responsible one." "Oh, honey," Amanda said, speaking for the first time. "You've been gone a long time. Rachel's not the same person you remember." As the main course was served, bits and pieces of information emerged through the stilted conversation. According to my family, Rachel had been spiraling downward for years. They spoke of missed family events, disheveled appearances, and suspicious behavior. She needed tough love, my mother insisted. We couldn't enable her behavior any longer. "So you just cut her off?" I asked incredulously. "We did what was necessary," my father said softly, his first contribution to this topic. Sometimes parents have to make difficult decisions. As I listened in growing horror, I realized the full extent of what had happened. Rachel hadn't just been uninvited to dinner. She had been completely cut off financially, kicked out of the family home where she had been living while finishing her master's degree, and worst of all, my parents had been spreading rumors that she was involved with drugs to explain her absence from family functions. My stomach churned as I excused myself to the restroom, pulling out my phone as soon as I was out of sight. I needed to hear Rachel's side of the story. I stood in the restaurant's elegant bathroom, hands shaking as I dialed Rachel's number. She answered on the third ring. "Donavan, is everything okay?" Her voice was tired but clear, nothing like the troubled person my family had described. "Rachel, where are you? Why aren't you at Dad's birthday dinner?" There was a long pause. "They didn't tell you?" "They're saying all kinds of things. That you're in trouble, that you're using drugs. Mom said you're dead to them. What's going on?" Rachel's bitter laugh came through the phone. "Wow, they're really spinning a tale, aren't they? I'm not at dinner because I wasn't invited, Donavan. I haven't been invited to a family event in over 2 years. 2 years? I repeated, stunned. "But you were at Christmas last year. Uncle James said something happened then." "I crashed Christmas," Rachel admitted. "I thought enough time had passed, that maybe they'd forgiven me. I was wrong." "Forgiven you for what?" Another long pause. "For helping you." The bathroom door swung open, and a man in a business suit entered. I quickly stepped outside to the hallway for privacy. "Rachel, I need to know everything. Right now. Remember 5 years ago when Mom and Dad gave you that ultimatum about law school?" I did. My parents had discovered I was developing an app instead of focusing on my studies. They had demanded I drop the project or lose their financial support. When I chose my startup, they cut me off completely. They didn't just cut you off, Donavan. They wanted to make sure you failed. Dad called his contacts at every venture capital firm in Boston to blacklist you. They tried to sink you before you could even get started. I leaned against the wall processing this information. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to know. I wanted you to focus on your company. So what happened with you? Rachel's voice grew softer. You needed seed money. I had my college fund and the trust from Grandma. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get you through those first 6 months. The truth hit me like a physical blow. You gave me your money? All of it? Not all of it, she said, but I could hear the lie in her voice. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have refused it. You were so determined to make it on your own, to prove them wrong. I closed my eyes, remembering how mysteriously that initial funding had appeared, through an anonymous investor I could never track down. It was you, all along. When Mom and Dad found out, they went ballistic. Said I betrayed the family by enabling your rebellion. That's when they cut me off too. Kicked me out of the house, stopped paying my tuition. But you finished your degree, I said, confused. I saw the announcement in the alumni newsletter. I worked 3 jobs, Donavan. Waitressing, tutoring, dog walking, whatever I could get. Lived in the worst apartment you can imagine with 4 roommates. It was rough for a while. Guilt crashed over me in waves. While I had been building my company into a billion-dollar enterprise, my sister had been struggling to survive, all because she had helped me, and I hadn't known, hadn't checked on her enough to even realize. Why didn't you come to me once the company took off? I could have paid you back 100 times over. That's exactly why, she said simply. I didn't help you to get paid back. I helped you because I believed in you. And I was right. Look at you now. Where are you living? What are you doing now? I'm okay, Donavan. I finished my degree. I'm working at a nonprofit. My apartment is tiny, but it's all mine. I'm making it work. I thought of my penthouse overlooking the Boston Harbor, my summer house in Martha's Vineyard, the private jet I had recently purchased, all while Rachel had been struggling in a tiny apartment. This ends tonight, I said, my voice hardening with resolve. I'm going back in there and setting things straight. Donavan, don't, Rachel warned. It's not worth it. It's Dad's birthday. That's exactly why it needs to happen tonight. The whole family is here. They need to hear the truth. There's something else you should know, Rachel said hesitantly. About Dad. What about him? He's sick, Donavan. Really sick. Heart problems. That's part of why I tried to reconcile at Christmas. I heard from Uncle James that it might be his last. The news hit me hard. Our father, always the picture of health and vitality, facing his mortality. It explained his tired appearance, the wincing when he moved. All the more reason to fix this now, I said firmly. Before it's too late. Just be gentle with him, Rachel pleaded. Whatever you do. As I hung up, I leaned against the wall, trying to compose myself. The situation was even more complicated than I had imagined. My sister had sacrificed everything for me, and my parents had punished her severely for it. But now, my father's health added another layer to consider. Could I really confront him on what might be his last birthday? With a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders and walked back toward the private dining room, my mind racing with everything I had learned. The weight of my success felt suddenly hollow, knowing what Rachel had given up to make it possible. As I approached the table, I saw my family laughing and talking as if nothing was wrong, as if they hadn't cast out both their children for the crime of supporting each other. My mother was holding court, gesturing dramatically as she told some story that had Aunt Patricia nodding in approval. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about clearing Rachel's name or confronting my parents about their lies. It was about redefining what family meant to all of us. And it started tonight. I slid back into my seat at the table, my perspective completely altered by Rachel's revelations. The cheerful conversation around me now seemed hollow, a performance of family harmony that masked the rot beneath. "Everything all right, son?" my father asked, noticing my expression. "You were gone a while." "Actually, no," I said, keeping my voice level. "Everything is not all right. I just spoke with Rachel." The table fell silent. My mother's smile froze on her face. "I thought we agreed not to discuss her tonight," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "No, you decided that." I corrected her. "And after what I just learned, we need to talk about her right now." My father sighed heavily, placing his napkin beside his plate. "Donavan, this isn't the time or place." "When is the time, Dad? When you've successfully erased her from the family? When you've convinced everyone she's some kind of addict?" Uncle James placed a cautioning hand on my arm. "Easy, Donavan. Your father isn't well." "I know," I said, meeting my father's surprised gaze. "Rachel told me about your heart condition." My mother's eyes flashed with anger. "She had no right. That is private family information." "She is family," I insisted, "despite your best efforts to pretend otherwise." "You don't understand the situation," my father said wearily. "Then explain it to me. Explain why you would cut off your own daughter for helping me. Explain why you would spread lies about her to the rest of the family." Aunt Patricia straightened in her seat. "What lies?" "Eleanor told us Rachel has been hanging around with drug users, missing work, asking for money." I turned to my mother. "Is that what you told them?" My mother took a sip of wine, her hand perfectly steady. "I told them the truth, as I understood it." "The truth?" I laughed bitterly. "Rachel gave me her college fund to help start my company after you cut me off. That's why you disowned her. She hasn't been doing drugs. She's been working 3 jobs to finish her degree because you stopped paying her tuition." My cousins exchanged shocked glances. Tyler leaned forward. Aunt Eleanor? Is that true? Of course not, my mother said dismissively. Rachel has always been dramatic, always seeking attention. She's manipulating Donavan, just like she tried to manipulate us. Stop it, I said firmly. Just stop. I've seen the transfer records, Mom. I know it was Rachel who funded me anonymously in the beginning. What I don't understand is why you would punish her for it. Because she betrayed this family, my mother snapped, her composure finally cracking. We had a plan for both of you, a path that generations of Williamses have followed, and you two decided you knew better. We didn't reject the family, I argued. We just wanted to make our own choices. Choices have consequences, my father interjected, his voice stronger now. We gave Rachel the same choice we gave you. Stand with the family or stand alone. That's not a choice, Dad. That's an ultimatum. The waiter approached our table, sensing the tension. Is everything all right with your meals? Everything is fine, my mother said coldly. We'll have dessert now. As the waiter hurried away, Uncle James attempted to defuse the situation. Maybe we should table this discussion for after dinner. This is supposed to be a celebration. A celebration of what? I challenged. Family? Half your family isn't even here because of lies and manipulation. That's enough, my father said sharply, then winced, placing his hand over his heart. Robert? My mother's anger instantly transformed to concern. I'm fine, he insisted, taking a deep breath. Just indigestion. Dad, please, I said, softening my tone. I know you're sick. Rachel and I both want to be there for you, but we can't do that if you and Mom keep pushing us away. For a moment, something like regret flashed across my father's face, but my mother spoke before he could respond. Rachel made her choice, she declared, standing to address the entire table. She betrayed this family's values and traditions. She chose to support Donovan's foolish venture instead of respecting our wishes. As far as I'm concerned, she's dead to us. We have no daughter. The shocking pronouncement hung in the air. Even Aunt Patricia looked uncomfortable with the finality of it. Eleanor, my father said quietly, that's going too far. All eyes turned to him in surprise. My mother stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. What did you say? My father straightened in his chair, looking suddenly more like his old self. I said that's going too far. Rachel is our daughter, regardless of her choices or ours. You're defending her now? My mother asked incredulously. After everything? I'm not defending anyone, my father said. But I've had a lot of time to think lately. When you face your own mortality, you start to see things differently. What are you talking about, Robert? My father turned to me, his eyes clear and direct for the first time that evening. I've been in contact with Rachel for the past month, Donavan. After my last hospital stay, I reached out to her. The revelation stunned me. You've been talking to her? Does Mom know? No, he admitted, as my mother's face reddened with anger. Eleanor doesn't know. I was going to tell her after my birthday. You've been going behind my back? My mother hissed. Undermining everything we agreed on? I've been trying to make peace with my children before it's too late, my father replied firmly. Something you might consider doing as well. The waiter returned with a birthday cake, took one look at the tense scene, and retreated hastily. My mother's carefully constructed control was crumbling before our eyes. Her husband had betrayed her. Her narrative about Rachel was being challenged. And I, the son who was supposed to have failed without their support, was instead successful beyond their wildest expectations. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother's influence over our family beginning to weaken, and I knew this was just the beginning of a long overdue reckoning. My mother stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and betrayal as she stared at my father. How long? She demanded. How long have you been secretly communicating with her? Does it matter? My father asked wearily. Of course it matters, she nearly shouted. We made decisions together about how to handle this situation. You agreed with me. I agreed because I was angry, my father admitted. But anger fades, Eleanor. Especially when you realize your time might be limited. The restaurant staff hovered anxiously near our table, unsure whether to proceed with the birthday cake or give us privacy. I caught the eye of our server and gave a small shake of my head. Now was not the time for singing and celebration. While my parents were distracted by their confrontation, I discreetly sent a text message to Marcus, my head of security, who was waiting outside. Situation complex. Implement contingency plan. Code Amber. Marcus had been with me for 3 years, ever since my company's valuation had first hit $1 billion, and security became a necessity rather than a luxury. Few people outside my immediate business circle knew about my wealth. I had deliberately kept a low profile, especially around my family. You had no right to go behind my back, my mother continued, her voice lower now but still intense. This family has standards, expectations. This family is falling apart, my father countered. Look around you, Eleanor. Both our children estranged. Our relationship with them reduced to lies and manipulation. Is this really the legacy you want to leave? Aunt Patricia interjected. Robert, you're being dramatic. Family disagreements happen. The children will come around eventually, when they mature. I couldn't help but laugh, drawing everyone's attention. I'm 32 years old, Aunt Patricia. Rachel is 30. We're not children having tantrums. We're adults who were rejected by our parents for making our own choices. Ungrateful choices, my mother clarified. After everything we invested in you. Speaking of investments, I said, seizing the opening. How is the family law firm doing these days? The sudden change of subject caught my mother off guard. She exchanged a quick glance with my father before responding. Williams & Associates is doing just fine, she said stiffly. Not that it's any of your concern. Really? Because I heard the firm lost the Harrington account last year, and the Petersons the year before that. Those were 2 of your biggest clients, weren't they? My father looked surprised. How did you know about that? I keep tabs on family interests, I said simply. Just like I know about the second mortgage you took out on the house to cover Dad's medical expenses, and the line of credit you secured against the firm to keep it afloat. The color drained from my mother's face. That's private information. Nothing is really private in banking circles, Mom. Not when you know the right people. Uncle James let out a low whistle. You've been busy, haven't you, nephew? I've been successful, I corrected him. Something my parents seem to have trouble acknowledging. Instead, they've been waiting for me to fail, so I'd come crawling back to the family firm. A firm that, ironically, needs my help far more than I need theirs. My mother's eyes narrowed. If you're suggesting we need charity from you. Not charity, I interrupted. Partnership, investment. The very thing you've been hoping for, just not on the terms you expected. A tense silence fell over the table as the implications of my words sank in. My cousins looked uncomfortable, while Uncle James seemed quietly impressed. You know, I continued, addressing the entire table. Now, it's interesting how narratives get shaped in families. Mom and Dad told all of you that Rachel and I were the failures, the disappointments. Meanwhile, Rachel has completed her master's degree, despite being cut off financially, and I've built a company valued at over $4 billion last quarter. $4 billion? Tyler repeated, his eyes widening. You're exaggerating. Look up Neurotech, I suggested. We're revolutionizing medical imaging technology. Our latest neural interface just received FDA approval. The shift in the room was palpable. My success wasn't just an abstract concept anymore. It was a concrete reality that challenged everything my family had been led to believe. If your company is so successful, my mother said, her voice dripping with skepticism, why are you driving a 10-year-old car and wearing off the rack clothes? Why are you living in that modest apartment? James mentioned. I smiled at her assumption. I never said anything about where I live, Mom. Uncle James respects my privacy enough not to discuss my personal life with you. You told me you had a small place downtown, my mother accused Uncle James. I said Donavan keeps a low profile, he corrected. You made assumptions about what that meant. I turned back to my mother. The truth is, I learned something valuable when you and Dad cut me off. Money doesn't define success. Character does. Integrity does. So yes, I drive an everyday car sometimes, and wear normal clothes. I don't flaunt my wealth. But make no mistake, I have more resources than this entire family combined. My father was watching me with an unreadable expression. Why are you telling us this now, Donavan? To gloat? To make us feel foolish? No, Dad. I'm telling you because it's time for honesty. All the cards on the table, including the fact that I purchased the building that houses Williams and Associates 6 months ago through a shell company. The bombshell landed with devastating effect. My mother actually grabbed the edge of the table for support. That's not possible, she whispered. Check the property records, I suggested. Neuron Holdings, LLC, my company's real estate division. The balance of power in the room had shifted completely. My cousins were looking at me with new respect. Aunt Patricia seemed conflicted, while Uncle James was trying not to smile. So what now? My father asked quietly. You own our building. You can evict us, destroy the family legacy. Is that your plan? Actually, I bought it to protect you, I said honestly. I knew the firm was struggling. I didn't want some developer to purchase it and force you out. Despite everything, you're still my family. For the first time that night, my mother seemed genuinely lost for words. The careful narrative she had constructed over years was crumbling around her. There's something else you should know, I continued. I've changed my will recently. If something happens to me, control of my company goes to Rachel. Not because I owe her, though I do, but because she's brilliant and capable. She's actually been working anonymously on my executive team for the past year. What? My mother gasped. Rachel works for you? With me, I corrected. As my chief operating officer, though her company ID uses her middle name to maintain privacy. We reconciled long ago, Mom. We just didn't tell you. My mother's face hardened once more. So this dinner, this whole reconciliation attempt, was just a setup? A chance for you two to humiliate us? No, I said firmly. It was a genuine attempt to heal this family. Rachel wanted to come tonight, but I asked her to wait. I needed to understand exactly what we were dealing with first. Well, now you know, my mother said bitterly. And you can tell Rachel it doesn't change anything. The firm may be struggling, but we still have our dignity. We don't need your charity, or hers. Eleanor, my father warned, don't say something you'll regret. It's too late for regrets, she snapped. And it doesn't matter anyway. I've already changed your will, Robert. Neither of them will get anything from this family. Not the house, not the firm, nothing. The casual cruelty of her statement hung in the air. My father looked shocked, suggesting this was news to him as well. You changed my will without telling me? He asked incredulously. Before my mother could respond, the private dining room door opened, and Marcus stepped in. 6 feet 4 inches of quiet authority, in an impeccably tailored suit, he commanded attention immediately. Excuse me, he said, his deep voice respectful but firm. Mr. Williams, there's an urgent matter requiring your attention. All eyes turned to my father, who looked confused. He means me, I said, standing up. What is it, Marcus? Marcus approached the table with the practiced efficiency of someone used to navigating delicate situations. Miss Williams, your helicopter is ready, he announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. The medical team is standing by for transport. The calculated public revelation had exactly the effect I'd intended. Heads turned from nearby tables. The waiter who had been serving us nearly dropped his tray, his eyes widening in recognition. Isn't that the billionaire from the news? He whispered to another server, just loud enough for our table to hear. My mother's face was a study in conflicting emotions as her carefully constructed narrative about her failed son collapsed completely in the most public way possible. The power shift was complete. The dining room had fallen into a stunned silence. Nearby diners were openly staring now, smartphones discreetly raised to capture the moment. My family remained frozen in various stages of shock as Marcus stood impassively by my side. Helicopter? My mother finally managed, her voice barely audible. Yes, I confirmed. We have a medical transport standing by. For Dad. My father shook his head in confusion. I don't understand. Neurotech's latest cardiac interface, I explained. The one that just received FDA approval. It's designed specifically for cases like yours, Dad. Continuous monitoring and regulation of heart rhythm without invasive surgery. That's your company's device? My father asked, the realization dawning on him. The one they've been calling revolutionary on the medical news channels? I nodded. We've had remarkable results in clinical trials. A 93% success rate in cases exactly like yours. But how did you know about my specific condition? He asked. Rachel has been consulting with your doctors, I admitted. Anonymously, through the company. We've been developing the treatment protocol for months. My mother's shock was transforming back into anger. You had no right to interfere with your father's medical care. His doctors would have told us if there was a viable treatment option. The device only received final approval last week, I explained, and it's not widely available yet. We're still scaling up production. So your father gets to be a guinea pig? Aunt Patricia interjected. How generous of you. Dad would be receiving the same device that's been successfully tested in over 300 patients, I countered. And he would be treated by the leading cardiologists in the country, who helped develop the technology. My father sat quietly, absorbing this information. And this helicopter? It's waiting to take you to our medical facility in Cambridge if you're willing, I said. Everything is prepared. It's your choice, of course. Before my father could respond, the private dining room door opened again. This time, Rachel stood in the doorway. My sister had always been beautiful, but now she radiated a quiet confidence I hadn't seen before. Gone was the shy, people-pleasing daughter my parents had raised. In her place stood a poised, professional woman whose presence immediately commanded attention. Sorry I'm late, she said simply. Traffic was terrible. My mother's face went completely white. What is she doing here? This is a private family dinner. I am family, Rachel replied, her voice steady. Whether you acknowledge it or not, she walked to my father's chair and bent to kiss his cheek. Happy birthday, Dad. To everyone's surprise, including mine, my father reached up and pulled Rachel into a proper hug. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice rough with emotion. The nearby diners were now openly watching the drama unfold. One woman was frantically typing on her phone, undoubtedly sharing the scene on social media. The waiter who had recognized me was explaining to his colleagues in hushed but excited tones who I was. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, Uncle James suggested, eyeing the growing audience. No need, Rachel said, taking the empty seat beside me. I think we've all had enough secrets and private conversations. Let's be honest with each other, for once. My cousins Tyler and Amanda were staring at Rachel, as if seeing a ghost. You look great, Amanda finally said. Nothing like what we heard. What exactly did you hear? Rachel asked, her tone more curious than confrontational. Amanda glanced nervously at my mother before responding. That you were struggling, having problems with substances. Rachel smiled sadly. The only substance I've been addicted to is coffee, to get through 18-hour workdays while finishing my degree and helping launch a billion-dollar company. You can't just walk in here and act like nothing happened, my mother said, finding her voice again. You betrayed this family. No, Mom, Rachel countered calmly. I loved this family enough to stand up for what was right, even when it cost me everything. Donavan had a vision that could help thousands of people, including Dad. I believed in that vision. I still do. A vision more important than centuries of family tradition? My mother challenged. Yes, Rachel said simply. Some things are bigger than tradition. My father had been watching this exchange quietly. Now he turned to my mother, with unexpected firmness. She's right, Eleanor. And I think deep down, you know it. Robert! My mother gasped, clearly not expecting him to side with Rachel. I've had a lot of time to think lately, he continued. Lying in hospital beds, staring at monitors, wondering if each day might be my last. It changes your perspective. This isn't the time or place, my mother insisted. It's exactly the time, my father disagreed. I may not have many birthdays left. I'd like this one to mean something. The restaurant manager appeared at the door, drawn by the commotion. Is everything all right here? He asked nervously. Everything is fine, I assured him. Just a family reunion, getting a bit emotional. His eyes widened as he recognized me. Mr. Williams, I had no idea you were dining with us tonight. Please let me know if there's anything at all we can do to make your experience more comfortable. More whispers rippled through the restaurant. A woman at a nearby table was pointing at me and showing her companion something on her phone. Undoubtedly, one of the recent articles about Neurotech's breakthrough technology. Thank you, I said to the manager. We're fine for now. As he retreated, Rachel turned to our father. Dad, you should know that the medical helicopter isn't just for show. We really do have a team waiting. The procedure to implant the cardiac interface is minimally invasive, and the recovery time is remarkably short. You could be home in 2 days. My father looked thoughtful. And this device of yours, it would help with the arrhythmia? It would do more than help, I explained. It would continuously monitor your heart function and make micro-adjustments to maintain optimal rhythm. It's like having a cardiologist watching your heart 24/7. The alternative is another open-heart surgery, Rachel added gently, with a much longer recovery time and no guarantee of success. My mother's eyes narrowed. And how much would this miracle treatment cost us? Or is this your idea of charity? It's not charity, Mom, Rachel said firmly. It's family, taking care of family. Something you taught us was important, remember? For the first time that night, my mother seemed genuinely at a loss for words. The cost is irrelevant, I added. Dad's health is what matters. My father reached across the table and took my mother's hand. Eleanor, I think we need to consider this. For my sake, and for the sake of healing this family, the dynamic had shifted completely. My mother, who had always been the unquestioned authority in our family, was now facing unified opposition from both her children and her husband. Her carefully constructed narrative about our failures and betrayals had been publicly dismantled, and yet, I didn't want to simply humiliate her. Despite everything, she was still my mother. What I wanted was understanding, reconciliation, a chance to rebuild our family on healthier terms. Mom, I said gently, this isn't about winning or losing. It's not about who was right or wrong 5 years ago. It's about moving forward, together, as a family. For a brief moment, I thought I saw something soften in her expression. Then the private dining room door burst open once more, and a young woman in chef's whites rushed in. I'm so sorry to interrupt, she said breathlessly. But are you really Donavan Williams, the one who created the neural interface technology? Before I could answer, my father suddenly clutched his chest, his face contorting in pain. The glass of water in his hand crashed to the table, spilling across the white tablecloth. Dad, Rachel cried, immediately moving to his side. Call 911, my mother shouted, panic replacing her anger. Marcus was already speaking rapidly into his communication device. Medical emergency. Implement extraction plan immediately. As my father slumped in his chair, the family drama was instantly forgotten. All that mattered now was getting him the help he needed before it was too late. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Marcus's medical team, which had indeed been waiting nearby, arrived within minutes. They were professionals from Neurotech's clinical division, equipped with emergency cardiac equipment and trained specifically for cases like my father's. My mother watched in stunned silence as they stabilized him, hooking him up to portable monitors and administering medication. Her anger seemed temporarily forgotten in the face of potentially losing her husband. His condition is stable but critical, the lead paramedic informed us. We need to transport him immediately for proper treatment. The helicopter is standing by at the park across the street, Marcus confirmed. Helicopter? My mother repeated, still struggling to process everything. Why not an ambulance to Massachusetts General? Our facility in Cambridge has specialized equipment designed specifically for cardiac arrhythmia cases like Dad's, Rachel explained. Time is critical, and the helicopter will get him there in minutes, instead of fighting through Boston traffic. My mother looked from Rachel to me, then to the medical team efficiently preparing my father for transport. "I'm going with him," she declared, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Of course," I agreed. "Marcus will escort you." As they wheeled my father out through the restaurant, the other diners watched in hushed silence. The gravity of the medical emergency had superseded the earlier gossip about my identity. My father managed a weak smile and squeezed my hand as they passed. "We'll be right behind you," I promised him. Once they had gone, I turned to the remaining family members. "Uncle James, can you drive Aunt Patricia and the others to the facility? The address is already in your GPS." He nodded, understanding the subtext. I needed a moment alone with Rachel before joining them. As our extended family gathered their things and left, Rachel and I found ourselves alone in the private dining room for the first time. "Not exactly how I planned this evening to go," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. Rachel gave a tired laugh. "When do things ever go according to plan with our family?" I pulled her into a tight hug. "I'm sorry I involved you in this mess. I should have just let things be." "No," she said firmly, pulling back to look me in the eyes. This confrontation was long overdue. Mom can't keep controlling everyone with her manipulations and lies. It needed to happen. "But Dad's collapse wasn't your fault," she insisted. "His condition has been worsening for months. If anything, this might be what finally gets him the treatment he needs." I nodded, trying to take comfort in her words. "Do you think there's any hope for reconciliation after all this?" "With Mom, I mean," Rachel sighed. "I don't know. She's built her entire identity around being the matriarch of a prestigious legal dynasty. Finding out her rejected son is actually a billionaire tech innovator, and her disowned daughter is his executive partner. That's a lot for her to process. Not to mention that we own the building housing their law firm," I added with a small smile. "There's that too," Rachel agreed. "But at the end of the day, she's still our mother, and she loves Dad. That might be enough of a starting point." We made our way through the restaurant, where the manager insisted the entire meal was on the house, Mr. Williams. I left a generous tip for the staff anyway, and thanked them for their discretion during what had turned into a very public family drama. Outside, my driver was waiting with the car. As we headed toward Cambridge, I filled Rachel in on everything that had happened before her arrival. "You actually told them about Neuron Holdings owning their building?" she asked, impressed. "Bold move. I wanted all the cards on the table," I explained. "No more secrets or manipulations." When we arrived at the medical facility, a state-of-the-art building that housed Neurotech's clinical division, we found our mother pacing anxiously in the private waiting room. She looked up as we entered, her expression unreadable. "They're preparing him for the procedure," she said stiffly. "They won't let me see him yet." "That's standard protocol," Rachel explained. "They need to run preliminary tests and prepare the surgical site." My mother nodded, then fell silent again. The tension in the room was palpable. "Mom," I finally said, "I know this evening didn't go as any of us expected, but I want you to know that everything we've done, everything Rachel and I have built, was never about rejecting you or Dad. It was about following our own paths. Paths that led you both far away from your family," she noted. But there was more sadness than accusation in her voice now. "Physically, maybe," Rachel acknowledged, "but you and Dad were always with us. The work ethic you instilled in us, the attention to detail, the commitment to excellence, those values helped build Neurotech." My mother seemed surprised by this acknowledgement. "You never said anything like that before." "You never gave us the chance," I pointed out gently. "You cut us off before we could explain." She sank into one of the waiting room chairs, suddenly looking every one of her 67 years. "I was so certain I knew what was best for both of you. The path was so clear to me." "The path you and Dad followed," Rachel said. "But times change, Mom. The world Donavan and I live in isn't the same one you grew up in." My mother was quiet for a long moment. Your father said something similar when he decided to contact Rachel behind my back. He said we were clinging to an outdated idea of success. Dad's a wise man, I said softly. Yes, she agreed, surprising both of us. He always was the wiser of us, though I rarely admitted it. Uncle James arrived with the rest of the family, creating a momentary distraction. As they settled into the waiting room, Dr. Sarah Chen, Neurotech's chief medical officer, entered with a tablet in hand. Mr. Williams, Miss Williams, she greeted us professionally, maintaining the workplace formality we'd established for situations like this. We've completed the preliminary assessment. Your father is an excellent candidate for the neural interface. And the risks? My mother asked immediately. Dr. Chen turned to her. Mrs. Williams, I presume? The procedure itself carries minimal risk. It's far less invasive than traditional cardiac surgery. The interface is inserted through a small incision near the collarbone, and the neural connections are established using our proprietary guidance system. In English, please, my mother requested. We'll place a small device near your husband's heart that will help regulate its rhythm, Dr. Chen simplified. The recovery time is typically 48 to 72 hours, compared to weeks or months for traditional surgery. My mother considered this information. And what are his chances without this procedure? Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. Based on the tests we've run, his condition is deteriorating rapidly. Without intervention, he faces a high risk of major cardiac event within the next 6 months. The clinical assessment hung heavy in the air. My mother turned to me, and for the first time that night, I saw genuine vulnerability in her eyes. This will help him? You're certain? As certain as medical science can be, I assured her. We developed this technology specifically for cases like Dad's. She nodded once, decisively. Then do it. Dr. Chen smiled. We've already begun prepping him for surgery. The procedure itself takes about 90 minutes. I'll update you as soon as we're finished. As she left, my mother turned to face Rachel and me fully. I need to say something to both of you, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I still don't agree with many of the choices you've made. I still believe there's value in tradition and family legacy. I started to respond, but she held up her hand to stop me. Let me finish. I don't agree with your choices, but I can no longer deny their results. What you've built together is impressive. And if it saves your father's life, then I will be eternally grateful for your rebellion. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But coming from Eleanor Williams, it was the closest thing to an olive branch we were likely to get. Thank you, Mom, Rachel said quietly. This doesn't mean I'm ready to abandon everything I believe in, my mother clarified. The firm is still important to me. Our family's place in Boston society still matters. We're not asking you to change who you are, I assured her, just to accept who we are. She considered this. I can try. For your father's sake, if nothing else. It was a small step, but an important one. As we settled in to wait for news about my father's procedure, the conversation gradually shifted to less contentious topics. My mother asked questions about neurotech, showing genuine interest in our work for the first time. Rachel shared stories about the nonprofit healthcare initiatives we'd been funding, which seemed to particularly impress my mother. By the time Dr. Chen returned to inform us that the procedure had been successful and my father was in recovery, something had shifted in our family dynamic. The wall of hostility and resentment hadn't come down entirely, but cracks had formed, allowing glimpses of a possible reconciliation. As my mother went to see my father in the recovery room, Rachel squeezed my hand. Small steps, she whispered. I nodded, feeling cautiously optimistic for the first time in years. Small steps. 3 months later, we gathered at my parents' home in Beacon Hill for Sunday dinner. It was the 4th such gathering since my father's procedure, a new tradition we were cautiously establishing. My father, looking healthier than he had in years, stood at the head of the table carving a roast. The small incision near his collarbone, where the neural interface had been implanted, was barely visible now beneath his button-down shirt. More wine, Donavan? He offered, gesturing to the bottle. Just a little, thanks, I replied, holding out my glass. I'm driving tonight. My mother emerged from the kitchen carrying a bowl of roasted vegetables. You could always leave your car here and have your driver pick you up, she suggested. Or stay in your old room. It's still available. This casual acknowledgement of my wealth was still new. In the weeks following my father's procedure, my mother had gradually stopped pretending my success didn't exist. She didn't exactly celebrate it, but she no longer denied it either. Thanks, Mom, but I have an early meeting tomorrow with investors from Singapore, I explained. Of course you do, she said, with a small smile that held only a trace of her former disapproval. Rachel arrived last, apologizing for her tardiness. Budget meetings ran long, she explained, kissing our mother's cheek and hugging our father warmly. The Foundation's healthcare initiative in underserved communities is expanding faster than we anticipated. The Williams Family Foundation was our newest venture, established with a substantial endowment from Neurotech's profits. It focused on providing cutting-edge medical technology to communities that would otherwise lack access. To everyone's surprise, my mother had agreed to serve on its board of directors, bringing her organizational skills and extensive social connections to bear for a cause that was gradually becoming important to her. Eleanor was just telling me about the fundraising gala she's planning, my father said as we all took our seats. Sounds like half of Boston society will be there. My mother nodded. The response has been overwhelming. It turns out that combining the Williams name with innovative medical technology is quite the draw. The irony of this statement wasn't lost on any of us. What had once been the source of our family's greatest conflict was now becoming the foundation of its new identity. How are things at the firm? I asked my father as we began eating. Busy, he replied. The partnership with Neurotech's legal division has brought in several new clients in the medical technology sector. We've actually had to hire 2 new associates to handle the workload. This was another development that would have seemed impossible 3 months ago. Williams & Associates now served as outside counsel for several of Neurotech's smaller divisions, allowing the family firm to benefit from my company's success while maintaining its independence. It had been Rachel's idea, a compromise that respected our parents' desire to preserve their legacy while acknowledging the changing business landscape. And how are you feeling, Dad? Rachel asked. Any issues with the interface? None at all, he assured her. Dr. Chen says my readings are textbook perfect. I haven't felt this good in years. My mother reached over and squeezed his hand affectionately. He's even talking about playing tennis again. With medical approval, of course, my father added quickly. Seeing Rachel's concerned expression, the conversation flowed naturally throughout dinner, touching on business, family matters, and current events. The tension that had characterized our interactions for so many years was not completely gone, but it had diminished significantly. We were learning to be a family again, with new boundaries and expectations. After dessert, my father suggested we move to the living room for coffee. As we settled into the familiar space, surrounded by family photos that now included recent editions of Rachel and me, he cleared his throat. I have something I'd like to say to all of you, he began, his expression serious. These past few months have given me a perspective I never expected to gain. Nearly dying has a way of clarifying what truly matters. My mother tensed slightly beside him, but he took her hand reassuringly. For too many years, Eleanor and I believed that success could only look one way, that our children's worth was tied to how closely they followed the path we had chosen for them. We were wrong. My mother's expression remained carefully neutral, but she didn't contradict him. Donavan, Rachel, he continued, looking at each of us in turn. You had the courage to forge your own paths, despite our disapproval, the strength to support each other when we wouldn't, and the generosity to help us when you could have justifiably turned your backs on us forever. I am profoundly proud of the adults you've become, not despite your choices, but because of them. Rachel blinked back tears, and I felt a lump forming in my own throat. Eleanor and I have been doing a lot of talking, my father went on, about the past and about the future, about the kind of family we want to be going forward. My mother straightened her shoulders. Your father and I have made decisions over the years that we believed were in everyone's best interest. Some of those decisions were misguided. Coming from my mother, this qualified admission was remarkable. What we're trying to say, my father continued, is that we'd like to start fresh, not to erase the past, but to learn from it, to build a new kind of family relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation or tradition. We've updated our wills, my mother added practically. The house and the firm will be left equally to both of you, to do with as you see fit, though I hope you'll consider preserving some aspects of the family legacy. Mom, Rachel said gently, the legacy isn't in the building or the firm's name. It's in the values that matter. Integrity, dedication, excellence. Those are the things we've carried with us, even when we went our own ways. My mother considered this, then nodded slowly. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps that's the tradition that truly matters. To new beginnings, my father proposed, raising his coffee cup in a toast. To family, I added, raising my own cup. To understanding, Rachel contributed. After a moment's hesitation, my mother raised her cup as well. To evolution, she said, surprising us all. Later, as Rachel and I prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside in the hallway. That night at the restaurant, she said quietly, when Marcus came in and the waiter recognized you, how did that make you feel? The question caught me off guard. Honestly, I felt validated at first, like I was finally proving to you that I hadn't failed. But then, when Dad collapsed, none of it seemed important anymore. She nodded thoughtfully. Success takes many forms, doesn't it? I'm beginning to understand that. Better late than never, I said with a small smile. Indeed, she agreed. Your sister tells me you're being considered for the National Medal of Technology and Innovation. That's quite an honor. It's just a nomination at this stage, I demurred. Still, my mother insisted, it's significant recognition. Your father and I would be proud to attend the ceremony, if you receive it. The simple statement carried enormous weight. I'd like that, Mom. As Rachel and I walked to our respective cars, she looped her arm through mine. Who would have thought we'd be here 3 months ago? Sunday dinner with Mom and Dad, relatively drama-free. Certainly not me, I admitted. Though I notice Mom still winces every time someone mentions the Foundation's community healthcare program. Rachel laughed. Baby steps, brother. She's trying. Yes, she is, I agreed. We all are. And that, perhaps, was the most important change of all. We were trying, all 4 of us, to build something new from the broken pieces of our family. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, old habits that threatened to resurface. But there was also a genuine desire to move forward, to create relationships based on who we actually were, rather than who our parents had wanted us to be. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. From the painful estrangement 5 years ago, to the dramatic confrontation at my father's birthday dinner, to the medical emergency that had finally broken through the walls of resentment and pride. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been necessary. Success wasn't measured in billions of dollars or prestigious awards. It wasn't found in maintaining traditions for their own sake. True success, I had learned, lay in the courage to be authentic, to stand by your convictions even when it meant standing alone. It was found in the strength to offer forgiveness when it wasn't deserved, and in the wisdom to accept people as they were, not as you wished them to be. My family was far from perfect, but we were learning, growing, evolving together. And in the end, that was the most valuable legacy of all. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family expectations? How did you handle it? And were you able to find reconciliation afterward? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about family challenges and healing. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics, please share this with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it brings some comfort or insight to those navigating their own complicated family relationships.